Hello, hello. Hello? Can you all hear me? Great. Hello again, and good afternoon. It's so wonderful to have you all here. I hope you had an incredible morning. I know I did. We're excited to get the afternoon kicked off, so welcome to the Emerging Leadership Breakout Session. My name is Christine Peterson. I'm on the Emerging Leadership Committee for WT2 this year. And for this first session, we are very, very excited to bring you a panel of experts to talk about strategic networking for successful product leaders. So with us today, we have Archana Ramamoorthy, the Director of Product Management from Workday, Parul Goyal, Product Manager at PayPal, Lauren Chan Lee, Senior Director of Product Management at Care.com, and Subha Shetty, Vice President and Head of Product at Loop Commerce. So if you would, please welcome them all to the stage with me.
When they give you high chairs, you know you're gonna fall. You know you're gonna fall.
With dress
like
on,
right
you have heels on, at all of 5 feet.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. I am super excited to be here at this conference. This is my second time at the conference. I came here 2 years ago. And I'm super excited to be part of this wonderful panel with 4 different women on one of the most interesting topics that we all end up talking about all the time, networking. How many of you worry about networking? How many of you think that networking is one of the most stressful things to do when you're a woman in the industry and you don't know people in the room? I've been there, done that. I'm not an expert. I do not have all the answers. Neither do we all in this room, right? So our goal for today is not to be like an usual panel where we have all these questions and a moderator asking questions, but to be more interactive. This is sort of like a talk show. Think of it that way. We're going to have questions that we ask each other, answer them. We're not 100% prepared in terms of how we've logistically organized the questions or how we're going to ask them. So we're going to take it with the flow, have you all participate. So ask us questions, and we would love to get some answers from you guys as well. So with that, I want to open it up for introductions. So we'll start with Lauren and then get this way.
Great. Thanks, Archana. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Chan Lee. As Christine mentioned, I'm a Senior Director of Product Management at Care.com. We're the largest online marketplace that connects families and caregivers for childcare, pet care, senior care. And I'm just really excited. This is my first time at the conference. I'd really like us to think of this room as just like a room of 50 of our best girlfriends, and we're gonna just share some of our stories, tips, war stories about things that we've experienced or tried when networking, and hope that we can just have a really great discussion here.
Hi, everyone. Subha. The best way to remember, my name is Shoebox without an X. So hopefully you can remember that. Also, my Starbucks name is Sue, but you can pick either. Had to make it simpler. Completely empathize with a few hands up there in terms of how networking is hard and stressful, so I'm happy to share my thoughts on it. I had product for a groundbreaking gifting commerce company called Loop Commerce. We were recently acquired by Synchrony, which most of you may be aware of, which is the world's largest retail credit program. Made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot, and just happy to participate in this conversation. So thanks for the opportunity.
Hi, everyone. I'm Parul Goyal. I'm a product leader at PayPal, specifically part of the Partners and Marketplaces team. So I used to tell people, my name is hard to pronounce, Parul. I used to tell people, oh, think of Paul, and then add an R in the middle. And that basically meant that people started calling me Paul. So I gave that up very quickly.
Or Paul.
I did that on a tennis court in a doubles game, and really, I don't think I responded to any of my partner's calls. Because why does he, who is he calling? But I have had quite an interesting journey with networking because I am an introvert. I don't really enjoy talking to strangers very much. So it used to really stress me out. I used to feel like I have to go to an event and make sure people know who I am, come back with some good context. And eventually I realized that I have to do what works for me, and it's not that. So that's one of our goals of this panel, is to just share that there is no one right answer. There are just, all of us have different personalities, different preferences, and the goal is to find what works for you. So hopefully, I will get to hear what works for you guys also in the process.
Thanks, Parul. So I thought I had the toughest name to pronounce. I guess other people have the same problem. So my name is Archana Ramamoorthy, and the way I tell people to remember my name is to think of an arch and Anna and add that together, Archana. It's worked, but then, yeah, I don't want to go there with my last name, so I'll stop there. So when I think about networking, one of the things that comes to mind is I'm not someone who's had a very straight career path overall. So I graduated with a bachelor's in electronics and communication engineering, did a master's in electrical engineering, specializing in VLSI technology and being a hardware engineer. I worked as a hardware engineer in a fab lab for a period of time, which I thought was fantastic at the time because I didn't have to talk to anyone, and I could just wear my lab coat and do my work. But over a period of time, I realized that that was not for me. Also because of the economy in 2008, where there was a downfall and recession, and international students were not hired into jobs in electrical engineering. So I switched my career and moved to computer science. And for me to get that courage to move, I needed people to tell me I was okay and that I could try. And that's where my first sort of bout of people and networks came into existence, and people helped me. The next switch was me moving from being a software engineer and a software developer to being a product manager. A functional specialist is what it was called in the East Coast, and that also required people to help me. And then I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast to be a product manager here. And that also required people and others and my network to help me. So I feel like there are several aspects where I've constantly thought to myself that networking was bad and that I was bad at it. But then when I think back now, there are several aspects that I owe to other people in my life. I now lead up security product management for Workday. And security is one of those areas that is underrepresented in terms of inclusion and diversity overall. So that means that I have to reach outside to have a better network to understand different areas.
So I've learned one thing already, which is that I'm the only one without a Starbucks name here. But honestly, hearing your story, Archana, about how you've moved throughout your career, it evoked some memories from my career too, and how having people in my network to be able to encourage me to move into new areas where I wasn't necessarily comfortable has played a really important part of my career. One specific example is when I was in strategy and corporate development. I really loved that work. It was very high level. I got to see all the problems of the organization and solve them. But I only got to make the recommendation. I didn't get to implement it. So when I started to feel like, okay, what do I do next? That's where the network really came into play, because I was then able to, broadcast kind of what I'm looking for, what are some of the things I'm thinking about, and then I had built enough internal goodwill and network that the opportunities came to me, and I ended up having a choice of 2 different options, which eventually led me down this product management path. So it's kind of cool to see how it's played a role for both of us.
And it's very interesting when we talk about how other people can sort of help. So I wanted to get your guys' views on, we've all heard about mentors, sponsors, allies. How have these people played a role in your lives? And how have you leveraged them? How have you asked for someone to be your mentor, for example?
I can tell you how I got my current role at PayPal, which a role I really love, I have been in for 3 years, was through sort of a mentor who was actually also my ex-manager. And I wasn't looking for a new position. I was quite happy in my role. I was like, oh, things are going well. And then my manager at the time brought up, oh, there is this new team starting, partners and marketplaces. You should apply for it. And I didn't really show much interest. And he kept pushing me to a point where I was offended. I was like, I thought I was doing a good job. Like, why are you pushing me out? I didn't tell him that, but I was very resistant to the idea. And then he had to explain to me that, number one, this is a new team. This is a strategic product which is going to stay a high priority for a while, and they really need your skill set. So he could see opportunity where I couldn't from my vantage point, right? And if it wasn't for him not just saying it once, but a few times, I would have really missed out on this wonderful opportunity. And everything he had said about the role and more has been true. And I think it was only because I had a good relationship. He was my manager, but I had told him that, oh, eventually I want to do something different. Right now I'm okay, but eventually I would like to do something different. And that really helped. It really did help my career at PayPal.
Just adding to that, it's quite serendipitous actually how I'm here, because I'm quite the poster child of not networking and mentorship from a formal standpoint. I'm a very extroverted person. I would love to have a coffee and go to the bar with any one of you, but when it comes to the formal networking or the mentorship, I just have very strong views about it in the sense that I feel very uncomfortable. It feels very artificial to me. It feels very transactional to me, and that's not how I am as a person at all. So it was very hard for me to network, to find a mentor per se. And although there is this mountain of research out there that says women would rather read a technical article 3 times more than actually just going out and meeting somebody who could maybe tell them something about what they want to learn about. So and like a good product manager, you look at the data and you go, okay, so research is telling you this, but this is not your personality. So, and like other product managers who would empathize, when you stop learning, you stop growing. So for me, networking and the concept of finding a mentor had to have a broader goal in terms of what I want to achieve or what motivates me. And for me, it was very simply learning new technologies, learning new things, learning from people who have different perspectives. And for those aspects, I'm more motivated to reach out and have a conversation with somebody who can teach me something about that. So for instance, there's this person who I really respect, who is a very respected Silicon Valley VC, whose work I'd been following, and who we briefly crossed paths at eBay. And at a point of time in my career, I was doing a lot of product management work, and I was doing some great work at eBay, Walmart.com, and I felt a little stuck in my work, and I felt like I needed something more to be able to move forward, but I didn't know what. And I thought I would reach out to him, and I did, and he did not respond. And so you feel rejected, and then you ask again. But if the motivation was more just about, let me just find my next job or my next career opportunity, I think I would have been less motivated with it. For me, the motivation was, hey, I'm at this point in my career where I feel like I need to expose myself to some different opportunity to keep myself engaged and motivated and keep growing and learning. And to that respect, I want to have a conversation with you, because it seems like you have been through that path, but actually done it a little differently than what I probably would have. So would love to have a conversation with you. And that kind of yielded a response, and we met for coffee, and he gave me this idea to product mentor various startups. And so I became a product mentor at 500 Startups, Founders Institute, 2 of the leading startup accelerators in the Valley. And through that work, I found a way to not only give in terms of my expertise and my knowledge, but also found a way that I learned so much from those founders in terms of new technologies, new ways of working, how they truly break down unnecessary process and focus on what the mission is and the overall value is. And I loved startups, and from then I've been at startups my whole life. So I think the concept of like finding a mentor or networking for me has to be personally a broader goal. And that goal can be different for any one of us, for each one of us. And for me, it was learning new things, operative word meaning new, and learning from different people, like operative word being different. And that's how I've reached out. And for me, those reaching out opportunities have been more authentic and genuine versus a much more transactional, process. So you relate to that?
Gears for a second.
Of course.
Because I think you said something really interesting about the research, where women would rather read a research paper than to actually just reach out to somebody.
I love those, actually.
And it got me thinking in my head, like, is it because of imposter syndrome? You feel like you have to be totally prepared before you can reach out to somebody? Or is it because of the fear of rejection? So we kind of just heard your story where, the initial reach out was not successful. Were there other examples that you guys experienced where perhaps the networking went wrong a little bit?
I have an interesting story. It's not my story, it's my brother's story. He'll probably kill me if he hears this, but So my brother worked for a company, and he wanted to switch jobs because he wasn't happy there. And so what he did was he reached out to somebody else who connected him with a hiring manager from another company, and he interviewed at that place. But the weird part was the person that he interviewed with was friends with his manager. And so the person actually went and spoke to that his old manager about the process and asked him like how he was and stuff. So that not only costed him his new job, but also made his old job even more miserable. The takeaways that we both had, both me and my brother, from this whole situation was LinkedIn is a powerful tool, so use it a little bit to find out who you're talking to and what the potential repercussions of that might be. Like they might be connected to somebody who might know you. So check and see if there are any possible reasons why that might happen. And the second thing is for all of us to take just a call to action as leaders in this room. It is okay for people to switch jobs or not want to work for you. So if you are unable to support them, don't make their life a misery. At the end of the day, we all want to go back feeling happy with our jobs. And so if someone's networking outside, don't take it personally. It's totally okay for them to go look for another job. And if you're not able to support them in the right way, it's okay to let them go and do something different. So I think that's important to make sure that we all understand that a lot of times it's not personal, it's just people have different interests and those interests change over a period of time. So it's totally okay for them to go and try something new. And that's where even getting an idea from your mentor or your sponsor or an ally comes in very handy to run that decision by somebody who's not directly affected by the decision you're going to make or take. And then they can give you a different perspective that you really haven't thought about. And that helps you a lot of times to think about something rationally and not think about it from a very personal perspective before taking action on something. And just going back, how many of you guys know the difference between a mentor, a sponsor, or an ally? I know we mentioned these terms, but I do want to make sure that everyone's clear on that distinction. If not, we can go into that as well. Okay. So the way I think about mentorship, and ladies feel free to add, is if I have a skill that I feel like I'm not good at, a lot of times people say I need a mentor, but I really like what they already touched on is being intentional about mentorship. So if there are skills that you feel you're lacking or you're not good at, find those skills and find out people who are good at that skill. And then go to them intentionally with a conversation to say, I heard you speak at this conference about this thing and you said that you're good at this or that I could judge that you're good at this. Would you be able to help me hone that skill? Or point me to resources or other people in case you don't have the time. So it's always important to give them an out because a lot of times some people might be really bad at saying no. So they might say yes to you, but they might not commit to it as much as you would like them to. So that's point number one for mentorship. Think about the goals, think about what you want to achieve, find the right people, and then go with that. That's what I would do as an introvert. The second one is sponsors. So outside of your mentorship circle and your direct management chain, it's always nice to have somebody else who's looking out for you. These are the people that make opportunities available to you. So for example, I work in the security area in Workday. 3 years ago, Workday was creating a brand new platform for managing implementer access into our system. And the person who was heading that effort came to me and said, can I borrow you for 8 months to build this product and build an MVP and get this out into production, and then you can go back to doing whatever you were doing before. And if you really like this, you could possibly stay back. So he lobbied with my manager to move me from under my project to this project to make me work on this for 6 to 8 months. I got that live, and then I decided, all right, I want to go back to security. That's where my heart is. But that opportunity wouldn't have come to me if I didn't have that person as a sponsor. So somebody outside of your direct line of management, maybe in another part of the organization, who you can talk to. And the last one is allies. People who are not like us in some sense. So having male allies is super important. It's super critical to have people know and understand what you're facing or what you're going through. And bringing people along is important. So if you're leaders and if you're managers, the one action you can take is if you have a male person in your group who is interested in being a manager at some point, take them to conferences with you. Take them to women conferences with you. Let them see what we see. And those are the allies that will stand up beside you when they see something wrong. And even after you're long gone from the company, they'll do it for somebody else. And I feel like those aspects are important when you think about mentorship, sponsorship, or having allies in your everyday workplace. So I know we deviated, but I will stop now and let you guys talk.
To add to it for a second. Sorry, Parul. I think with mentors, it's important to not just try to look for somebody who's super high up to be your mentor. You can really open it up to anybody, you know, who's around you. They just have to have the skill that you're looking for. So it may as well be somebody who is more junior than you. Maybe they have, you know, this fresh technology skill that they just learned in school and they're new in the workplace. And they can still be a really valuable mentor for you. So be really open, I think, about where you look for mentors. On sponsors, I kind of disagree with you a little bit, where you recommend it only looking for people outside of your business area. I think that they can be. I don't think you have to restrict yourself to people who are in totally different areas, because I think one of the important qualities of a sponsor is that they're somebody who's in the room when you might not be. So that could be when you're having a promotion discussion, to have people other than your manager who are advocating for you. It could be when those stretch opportunities arise in the organization. So I think, you know, it is important to have a wide enough network, but you don't have to say, oh, only people who are outside of my chain of command.
So actually, you bring up a good point, which is looking for mentors. And you mentioned this. In fact, one of the people whom I draw inspiration from for networking is somebody who reports to me. There's this youngish product manager, and he, I think, just thinks a lot about the dynamics at the company, what's going on, like more so than I do, right? And so he would come and tell me, give me his analysis of what's going on and what's going to happen. So one, speculation is fun, but it also kind of, it forces me to think that way a little bit more, that instead of being focused on what's going on around me, right, thinking about what the bigger picture, what the changes are going on, and, you know, what do I want to do next. So that's right. I think if you restrict it to just, you know, the leadership level, people who are 2 steps ahead of us, I think we're really going to restrict ourselves.
And they're getting hit up all the time, right?
Yeah, so exactly.
They're getting overloaded by requests, and, you know, you can't assume that just because someone is senior and a woman, they should mentor like 100 women.
And so in that context, do we want to share some listening strategies on how do we actually listen to people at various different levels who bring all of that information to you? Because there is information overload in the world in general and in communication every day. So how do you listen to, you know, this person who's actually brought this fresh perspective, whereas it's very easy to say, hey, I'm more senior than you, and so presumably I should know better than this. So let me give you an example that I have, and I'd love to hear your examples of how, you know, you're listening and your listening strategies in general. I think, was it in the keynote today that was said, I think it's important to not only listen to the words that have been said, but also to the words that have not been said. The body language, the facial expression, the tone. The tone. Yes. So the game of tones is something I'm really looking forward to now. And I think those are so important and key while actually listening to a message or a piece of advice or a piece of information that somebody is sharing, in terms of understanding what is the motive behind that, and you know, kind of unpacking that a little bit.
Yeah. I think if you put yourself in the asker's shoes, sometimes they're a little uncomfortable. They might not be as forward with asking for exactly what they want, and they might be asking kind of in a little bit of a hidden way.
Exactly.
So I
Which
think
really mean is, yeah.
Yeah. So you have to like just keep that in mind, that they might be a little bit reticent to share exactly what they want. And I think some tactics that help are to try to listen, paraphrase what they're saying, and maybe even, you know, ask if your assumptions are true. Like, oh, I think you said this. Are you looking for X, Y, Z? And then just see, you know, what input they have to that.
My side, I feel a lot of times you understand the impact of a conversation or what someone said after you go back home and think about it. So it's okay to revisit conversations. It's okay to go back and apologize. It's okay to like ask them for more clarification after. So don't assume that a conversation is closed after you've walked out of the room. And I think that's something a lot of people don't realize or understand, and then they think about it for a long, long time, but they never take action. But no conversation is ever over. If you are vulnerable and if you trust the other person and if you come from a point of view where you're positive, you can always re-have conversations. But when you're in a conversation, being intentional and listening is something that everybody should work on. I'm working on it, honestly, especially with the world being more and more virtual, with more and more people not being in person. It becomes something very important for all of us to care about and all of us to like think about. It's not very easy to read other people's mind, but we can try, at least a little bit, with the people that we end up working with every day that we care about and they care about us, right? So at the end of the day, we do not want anyone to walk away from a room feeling unheard, but it's not always important to put our point forward because there are different views and you already know your point. So you might benefit from listening to another person's point.
Yeah, I think one thing I would like to add is there is listening, and then there is the bigger picture, which is the signal that you are getting from that conversation. And I learned this a little bit, it took me a while to learn this, because what would happen is I would reach out to somebody usually senior to me saying, oh, I would love to meet with you and pick your brain about something, and they would say yes. At times maybe because they don't really want to say no is why they said yes. And then I would meet with them, and it would be like there was no chemistry. And I would come out of these meetings feeling rather like, what did I do wrong? Like they didn't seem invested. I feel like I didn't really get what I wanted. And eventually I just learned to read that signal, right? It wasn't me, it wasn't them. It's number one, we don't have chemistry, because I feel like finding mentors, sponsors, it does require chemistry. It is like dating to some extent, right? That somebody might be a good sponsor for Subha, but like we have no chemistry, and that's okay. That really isn't anybody's fault. So I think I just learned to read that signal better, which is, okay, I don't think this is a great one-time meeting, and this is where it ends. And honestly, that has saved me a lot of time. That has saved probably others a lot of time and awkward conversations, which is, just don't, if you feel rejected, don't take it seriously. Don't take it personally. Just read the signal from it that this is not going to work out and move on.
And one of the ways I think to kill a networking conversation, per se networking, I say quote unquote, is after having that kind of a, what was that conversation about? When the person actually says, it was wonderful talking to you, we had such a great time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, were we not in the same room? I mean, I'd rather have a note from a person that says, let's try again, or something like that.
Yeah, maybe it's not the right time.
Maybe about a different topic. Yeah.
But I would love to hear from you guys. How do you deal with rejection in networking, where you don't get the response that you're looking for?
I think if you don't get rejected, you're not trying enough. And I've certainly gotten rejected before too, or I've gotten the meeting where they say yes, but they don't really want to be there.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's just important to keep in mind, again, the other person's perspective, right? Like maybe they have other stuff going on in their life today. Maybe, their child is sick or whatever, and it's not you, but they're distracted for other reasons. Maybe they have some fire drill going on at work. You don't know, and for whatever reason, the chemistry wasn't right or they didn't have time. But I think it's important to, as Subha said earlier, like just keep in mind what is your end goal with all of it. If your end goal is, I want to find a new job or I want to move ahead in my career, then just take it as a learning point and move on. Don't take it personally.
I totally agree. I remember when I first wanted to apply for a job at Workday, I emailed 8 different recruiters on LinkedIn who were Workday recruiters, and everyone said no. They all either got back to me and said, like, you're not a great fit for the job, or they just, like, didn't respond. But I knew I was good for the job. I kind of knew I was good for the job, and I didn't want to just take that rejection. So after 8, I didn't stop. So I found someone on the Duke alumni network that went to Workday, and I emailed them. And I said, hey, I know I've never met you. The only common connection we have is that we both went to the same school. You were not even from my batch 10 years before I graduated. But I said, I'm really passionate about this opportunity. I really think I would be a good fit. I'm not asking you to refer me into the company, but like one message the right person and just put my resume in front of the hiring manager or someone who can take a look and see if I'm eligible or not, and I will not bother you again. And that's what happened. They put me, like they sent one email to the right person who was the hiring manager. She called me back. She's one of my mentors. Her name is Erin. I think she was at the previous conference last year. She actually has opened doors for me beyond that, even within the company. And she was one of the people that gave me a call, talked to me, passed me on to other people, and made that opportunity happen. If I just said, you know, I've tried with 8 different people and it didn't work out, I'm gonna stop, it really wouldn't have happened. So if you have a goal, if you know you're the right person for it, go for it. Just because 2 people say no, the world is like really large. There are like way more people than it can hold. So someone's gonna help you. So it's totally fine to ask for help, because if we have to make all the mistakes ourselves, we're not gonna have enough time. So ask for help, ask people. Like, people are usually ready to help, and people are usually there with good intentions. No one's there to like say, I'm gonna wake up this morning and have a terrible, make someone else's day terrible. Says no one, right? So
I do want to touch upon a couple of things that, you know, Archana and Lauren mentioned. The key is motivation and passion. And believe me, I've been through people not responding to my emails, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to see this person again, or I'm going to remove them from my LinkedIn network. I've been through the whole gamut of emotions here. Yes, we go through a lot of that, right? And it's important to acknowledge that and kind of move on. But again, to Lauren's point, what is the goal of wanting to connect with them? And if you have a goal, if it's higher, you know, has a purpose, then you will be motivated to try again or try something differently, and that would work. So I think the key is to not give up.
So, Subha, do you actively unfriend people from your network?
Do we have to go and check once we get home?
Well, you know, it actually brings up a good point, which I was reading a recent study from the Kellogg School of Management, and it talks about 2 strategies, right? You can either have a very broad network, or you can have a very strong and central network. And the study argues you actually need both as women. Men can make do with only a broad network, but women actually need both, because they argue that having the broad connections lets you find out about opportunities, so maybe don't unfriend them or think twice before you do that.
I've learned the hard way, yeah. I mean, come on, how many people have unfriended somebody from their Facebook or LinkedIn network? Come on, truth be told. Okay, so at least a good 20% of us. It's okay, people. It's a very normal thing to do. But to Lauren's point again, you know, a broader network does have advantages, even though it's not an active network, because it exposes you to different opportunities. Sometimes the updates that they share or the articles that they like on LinkedIn definitely spark a lot of you know, great insight for me. I love reading about all these things. So as I said, I'm more in the I would rather read a research article kind of person. I'm definitely becoming a little different now because I'm hiring a lot. So it's definitely a process. So the answer 5 years ago would be very different than what I have right now. But right now, I think the answer is definitely more building a stronger, broader network. And I don't think those are two opposite. Like they're not mutually
Have your
exclusive.
cake and eat it too. Yeah. Well, and that's what the article says, is that you need to also have this strong central network, because as women, we don't actually share private info as openly as men do. So having access to that, where you can ask the real questions like,
Absolutely.
oh, what is it like culture-wise? Is it a bro culture? What happens if, as a woman, I need to go and pick up my child when he's sick from school? How are people going to react in those situations? And you can't ask that necessarily openly if you're in an interview setting, but you could ask your friend that works there.
And I probably have the opposite view. I'm usually the person that gets really, really afraid of going into a networking event, and I'm the one in the corner who picks up my drink first, and then I'm like looking around the room to find the right person to talk to. I usually end up picking the other introvert in the room that's in the corner. So I've learned over a period of time to embrace my weakness or my personality type and go for that kind of networking. And that's what works for me. I am fine picking the right event where I know that my interests will be well represented. So I'm a security geek. So I pick security conferences or close-knit like product groups where people discuss technology. I know there are going to be like-minded people in those kind of events, so I do my research in finding the right event. And then I usually go and pick out 2 or 3 people in that event and have a very good conversation with them and then follow through with that. And I should probably tell you guys a story about how we all met. I'm sure you're wondering, we're all from different companies and we work in completely different spaces and expertise. So one of the ways in which we met was we participated in the Product Idol, the Bay Area Product Idol, which was part of the Women in Product community. And we were all part of that network, except Subha, who's going to participate this year. But we all participated in the event. And if you look at the brochure, you probably see Elizabeth's name in it. So she was supposed to be the other panelist, but she's not here for personal reasons. So the 4 of us met at that place, and then we bonded at that point. And then we started inviting each other to conferences because we knew that we enjoyed speaking and we wanted to give back to the community. And our way of giving back was sharing the knowledge or the little things that we've learned through the way to this community. And we figured the best way to do that is with friends, right? So we're a network of friends, and we make sure that we provide opportunities for each other when we see that. And we go up and present with folks. And Elizabeth introduced us to Subha, and that's how Subha is here today.
Elizabeth and I had done a panel together a long time ago. And I've done a lot of panels, but with Elizabeth was like a bit of a kindred spirit. I miss you, Elizabeth. And thanks to her.
Should have just put her picture here still.
I know, right? Yeah, she's there. She's in spirit. But, meet these wonderful ladies because of that connection. And so did I really network with Elizabeth to be able to do that? No, it was something very organic in terms of being a part of a group, an affinity group where we shared similar interests, but also were different enough that we had enough to learn from one another and built on, learning from one another and connecting with one another. So it felt very organic to me.
I know the personality types. We had 10 plus people or 12 plus people in the group, but it was only the 4 of us that decided that we were just going to connect and talk to each other. So.
And I think that's where knowing yourself and just accepting yourself that, for me, I'm never going to be, somebody, the life of a party, right? And then saying, okay, you know what, when I go to a networking event, like similar to Archana, I pick it carefully, like where I go. And my goal is to talk to one new person. And if I meet that, I'm happy. But then my work is to keep in touch with that person, right? So I do have a closer knit network. A lot of my energy goes in keeping it that way. Then I have to put in energy in making sure I stay in touch with these people. We meet for coffee, that we really have real conversation. It's not just a LinkedIn connection, it really is a friend.
So Parul, since you pick your connections, how do you be strategic in terms of who you build your network with?
I think there are 2 things. One is, I think almost everybody has touched upon it, is the common interest, right? So for me, small talk for a lot of us is hard, right? You say, oh, I'm Parul Goel, where do you work? And then where do you go from there? But if you meet at an event where you are talking about something you're really interested in, that just reduces that friction. It's easier to have a conversation. So I meet people at events that I'm really interested in, events or topics that I'm really interested in. So Toastmasters is one of them. Gardening is another one. TV is another one. And the second thing is, I think the second thing is chemistry. Right? If there is chemistry, I put effort. If not, then we say our goodbyes and move on. All right, we have 5 minutes left. Before the Q&As.
45,
Yeah.
right? Okay. There's one takeaway or one thing that you all want people to leave away with, like a tactical tip that you want to give away as something that we can all do to network more or find the right connections. What would that be?
Anybody can go first. Don't just look at me.
Yeah. I think if it's truly a tactical tip, I would though frame it in the context of networking overall. And again, from me, who is a skeptic of networking, for me, networking is broadly divided into 3 different types as it has been identified: strategic networking, operational networking, personal and development networking. The personal development networking is how you want to learn, grow. Operational is the work that you want to do right now. What is the network that will help you do your job? And the strategic networking for me is forward thinking in terms of what the future opportunities are. So for me, tactically, if I break down my network into these 3 networks, and at any given point of time, decide to invest time in either one of those differently, that would be the best way for us, for me at least, to be able to make sense of the information overload and the people around me that I can help and who can be helped, who I can be helped by. So for instance, now I'm focusing more on the strategic networking part, which is what is the future looking like? What's the future of e-commerce technology? Where are we going as a world, as a digital organization in terms of the business that we're actually in? And so I reach out and find information and people who are able to help me in that strategic aspect of networking. So that's a tactical tip in terms of just compartmentalizing it a little bit and focusing in each different one at any given point of time, whatever your focus is at that point of time. So that's
add just one point to that. I would say that the starting point for doing that, and I really totally agree with her, it's important to have different types of networks. There are so many things that you want to grow about yourself. But the first thing I would say is being self-aware. Find out why you want to network, and that's going back to the same point again. So if there's one takeaway, I would say write down 3 things that you want to develop or learn professionally, as a hobby, and as a person. And then you can bucket them into, I need them because of work, I need them because I want to grow as a person, I need them because I want to take up a leadership role, I need them because I don't feel like I'm a good leader today, whatever that might be. But bucket that and be intentional. Do not worry about calling out your own flaws. You really need to, because that's the best way in which you can know where you need to grow. And that leads you into that point of then bucketing the different kinds of networks and figuring out who can help you get there.
I would like to add, just my tactical tip would be stop telling yourself that you are not good at networking or you don't like networking, because eventually we are the stories we tell ourselves. And the more, honestly, I mean, the way this panel came together was we went for an event that we enjoyed, and along the way we met one another. Right? And honestly, that is probably the most authentic form of networking. So if you stop, just stop telling yourself that I don't like networking. And it will become so much easier. It really is just a way to meet people, have interesting conversations, and then do panels together.
Mm-hmm. And then my last tip, which will be totally different, is that instead of just thinking, what do I want to get out of the network, you can also think about how can I give back. So, Adam Grant, he wrote this whole book about give and take. It's great, read it. But, giving is a really important part. You can think of it as sowing the seeds of karma that eventually it'll come back to you, even if you're not tracking it. So think about people that you know or that you can help, and think about ways that you can help them so that it deepens your relationship. One example is that a friend of mine is starting to do some leadership coaching, and so one of the things that I did was just try to help her think of people who could benefit from coaching and help to introduce them. So you can think of ways that you can help people that you know and help them, and that will in turn become a stronger network for you in the future.
So we're going to open it up for questions.
Thank you for the wonderful discussion. I had one question around sponsors. You talked about sponsors, right? So how do you find a sponsor? A sponsor just happens because you happen to work with them, they have seen your work, or you go and seek out a sponsor?
I seeked out a sponsor, and I had to tell them what a sponsor was. I mean, these are concepts that are new in the industry. When you look back 15 or 20 years, people were recommended for jobs. Word of mouth was the way people got jobs. Then came resumes. Now it's going back to referral programs where there's more word of mouth sort of ways in which people sort of get you opportunities. So it's important. It could happen both ways. It depends on how your company organizes itself and how it advertises mentors and sponsors. But it's totally okay for you to directly think about who a good sponsor would be, either in your reporting line or outside, and approach them for that conversation. And one of the ways in which you can do that, the best strategic networks that I have usually formed are through gateway connectors. I am not a great gateway connector because I have a smaller strategic network, but I still connect people within that network. But the best way to network is find somebody who can connect you with someone who will be a good sponsor or a mentor. So have one or two who are really strong mentors for you, who will really root for you, who believe in you, and then use them to figure out these other connections that you can make. That's one good way to start out a network. There are several, but just one.
To add to that though, I agree you can ask directly for a sponsor, but just asking someone to be your sponsor is not enough. You still have to have proved yourself either by reputation or directly with that person, right?
You need to have credibility. Like I cannot join a company tomorrow and go approach like 3 managers above me or someone separate and say, hey, can you be a sponsor? Like you should be known in your field and you should be somebody who is credible in the organization, who's made an impact. Only then will people sponsor you. So before networking, before mentorship, as I said, there's the whole self-awareness part of who you are, what you have contributed, and what your impact has been. And once you prove yourself and once you've like done things yourself, then you can use that as a mechanism to ask for other things.
Thank you for sharing your ideas. I would like to share my side of the story. I work in a company called Shipwire, and I love the culture, I love the team. I go above and beyond the expectations. I finish my job very early, like way early, and I don't have communication problems, I don't have stage fear. But the only thing I do is, I don't really talk to everyone at work. I talk to my team, and I don't really think there is a reason why I should talk with the others. Is that wrong? Is that something that I should improve on? I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, because in all my one-on-ones, I keep hearing about, oh, you should talk to the other teams. You should at least talk to 1 team a week. Come on. I'm like, no, I don't see a reason why I should talk unless there's a reason. So is that something wrong? Is that something that everyone should be doing, like talking to everyone? Like, I don't know. I just want to know what is the right thing to do.
Can I take that and quickly answer that? So I completely empathize with you. I started off as an engineer myself, and my motto was, I'm going to put my head down and do the best possible work as I can as an engineer. Why should I talk to, X, Y, and Z? So there's a recent study that was done by HBR, Harvard Business Review. They did a study over 165 law firms, and they found out that the lawyers who actually worked just within their teams, put their heads down, did the work that they needed to. And there were another type of lawyers who actually went for the socials, or, interacted more with the other teams in the law group, or interacted with finance to actually figure out what the budgeting of this law program would actually look like, for et cetera. The second set had more billable hours. So there is enough and more research that suggests that the people who do reach out and have more conversations with more cross-functional teams are considered more productive. So what that means is, again, not to, again, do something that feels artificial to you, but how can you naturally have a conversation with a team that will still help you achieve maybe some of your goals? Maybe speaking to somebody in a cross-functional team would help you get a better perspective of how the budgeting of actually your group works, or what the cost structure is in terms of, the hours, or I don't know exactly how it works in Shipwire and which team you're from, but something that would actually give an impact, because we're all working in organizations which are, the day of just my team, it's gone. We should wake up to it sooner than later. So talking to finance teams, talking to product, design, business teams, marketing teams, I believe will only help me do my job better. So I think for you, you have to find your motivation and your goal in terms of how talking to another person within the organization, and maybe it's starting off with just work, like forget the family and where do you hang out in the evenings or what your hobby is, but it's maybe just about work, because work is something we're passionate about. We all come to work, as you said, with a shared sense of purpose in terms of what we want to do for the company, and so do the other teams. So getting their perspective on it can only help me do my job better. And I think if that you see it from that perspective, you will be motivated to be able to have more conversations. So that's just something that I wanted to add.
Also, it doesn't mean that you have to meet with everybody on the other team or all the other teams, right? Maybe we'd start with one cross-functional team that you work closely with, you have something to talk about. especially in
common interests.
Yeah, the
kind of
common
thing, yeah.
interest. Like start small, but eventually, right, as we all grow in our careers, one of the advantages you can have at work is information. And honestly, information goes to people who do have broader networks, right? So if there's something, like the person who reports to me, he has an amazing network. And thanks to him, I benefit from it. But there is a benefit to having a broad network. So it is something that's worth investing in, I would say.
Even if it's just like 2 minutes, you're in the elevator, and just sharing something that you're working on. You know, I think from the other person's perspective, they're probably working really hard too, so they're not spending time to figure out what you're working on. And I think that kind of information sharing, you might find out that, oh, actually they're working on something that's related, or we can learn something from each other. Or if not, it's not like you lost anything, right? It was just 2 minutes in the elevator or bathroom or getting water or whatever.
Can I just add one more thing? A lot of companies have groups, right? At PayPal, we have a running group, and there is a women in technology group. So joining those groups, like something that you're really interested in, really helps getting around this, yeah.
We have a reality TV Slack channel.
There you go, see?
I would also ask back to your manager about why they're saying what they're saying. Maybe there's a motivation there. Maybe they want you to improve in something, or maybe they want you to like benefit because you're looking for promotion, or you're looking for more cross-functional projects. So even understanding the motivation will help you justify to yourself as to why you're doing what you're doing and how it's going to benefit you.
Two hours every day, no.
Yes, you set an alarm.
You just email
You wake up
them,
at 3 a.m.
When your kids are sleeping, and you know.
So we talked about it over lunch, and we realized that none of us were that, you know, systematic about it. Although I think there's something to be said for creating opportunities for yourself. So one of the things that I do in volunteering is that I work with our alumni association, and I collect the class notes for our alumni magazine for our class. And you know, it's a great thing that's easy for me to do because I can just email people when I have time, and it also gives me a reason to reach out to people so that, you know, at least a couple times a year I'm pinging a random group of my classmates. So, you know, I think that's a great way to look for different opportunities where you're doing it, it's authentic, there's a purpose, and then you're just kind of like forcing yourself to do it too.
I recently read this article about how there's this person who on his or her 30th birthday decided to send out thank you notes to 30 different people in their network who have helped them. And so one of the way I think about this is not just time, but strategic milestones. A new year is a great time to think about what are some of the things or people you want to reach out to. Summer or the end of it may be a time to, you know, recalibrate on where you are in the year and how you're doing. So I think of it not as time. Otherwise, I'd be setting an alarm at 3 a.m. when my child is sleeping, and you know, when the housework is and the dishwasher is loaded, kind of thing. But it's not. It does take time. And so when we think about milestones, for me that feels more natural. And again, because it feels more natural, I'm more motivated to be able to follow through on some of those conversations. Because it does take time to respond to an email with thoughtfulness. And in this day and age of, you know, auto responses, I mean, it's crazy. Like, you have to really go beyond in terms of actually thinking how to actually be personal in that conversation. So it takes time. And so for me, it's more, again, going back to it. I'm sounding like a broken record by the end of this, but it's what is the motivation? For me, it's around these milestones that are more organic and that I'm more motivated to invest time in. Does that make sense? Yeah.
More goal-oriented, same stuff. So I usually have one personal goal for myself. It's usually like something that I want to learn and something that I want to give back for. And I usually try to combine both of those to find people that I can use as, like, for example, I was teaching in Indiana State University on product this year, and then I taught at a couple of other places that didn't have access to product management, but that was my way of both presenting and improving my presentation skills and giving back to the community. And in the process of doing so, like, I have a connection with the professors in those schools that are now, coming back to me and my network that I can now introduce to them to do more of these presentations and to give back to the community. But again, like, using your passions and your goals as a mechanism to think about networking is a better way to think about it when we're not naturally inclined to put in the time or the effort required after work. I have a really long commute. I don't want to be spending time after like 6:30 in the evening at a place where I'm feeling stressed out, and then come back home to like a really exhausting like day overall. So just orienting it around your goals and where you want to be and how you want to give back is a good way to connect them all together.
Hi, my name is Selena and I work at TRI, and I have a question based on what you mentioned before regarding how women are more careful with their personal information than men are, and traditional networking and meeting up generally involves exchanging some sort of contact info. You have either your personal email and cell phone, or you have your work email and work phone. And there is LinkedIn to bridge that now, but in terms of the final details, a lot of times somebody will put their cell phone number at the end so that you can actually physically meet at whatever table. So do you have any ideas on how to navigate that? Because you do reach a point where you feel pressure to give some of your personal information, and especially in a male-dominated industry, a lot of times you might be meeting with people who are around your age, maybe of the opposite gender or something, and you might not want to give your personal email or cell phone, but you also, if it's for looking for another job or something, you don't want to give your work email or work phone. So how do you navigate that now?
Have you actually, can I ask you a question back, please? So have you felt like there has been a limitation to how much you could actually reach out, or the responses that you're getting based on the amount of personal information that you have shared?
I don't feel a limitation, but I do feel a pressure at that final moment of should I also respond with my cell phone number because they put theirs up or something like that.
You tried.
It's like I'm giving something
say
up.
No. As somebody who works in the security industry, I just say, sorry, I'm a security person. Of course. Give you personal information. I say it with a smile. And that's why there's LinkedIn to connect. And depending on how connected you want to be, you can tell them, you can follow me on LinkedIn, or you can say we can connect on LinkedIn. So that way you even have the opportunity to not add them as a connection if you don't feel comfortable. But I think it's okay to say it.
What you're getting at, though, is if you're meeting in person, sometimes, even if you're meeting at Starbucks or something, then you need to provide contact info in case if you can't find each other or whatnot. And I've actually never thought about that angle. When I brought up the private info thing, I meant more like women don't share their salary information as much with others or things like that. But just one thing top of mind is could you use Google Voice or something like that where your number is masked, but you'll still get the contact?
I think that you could still use LinkedIn Messenger or one of those neutral forums, and as long as you meet at a place that's well known, it should be fine. It probably is on you at that point to go 5 minutes earlier and just be there, and also have it on your phone, so if they want to message you on that forum, you can use that platform. You don't have to give your cell phone number if you're uncomfortable.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I recently went to an event and I talked to a lot of people and I got a lot of LinkedIn requests, but honestly, I don't even feel the pressure to connect with them, right? I mean, there was this one guy who kind of stood out. I'm like, no, I'm not even going to accept your request. I don't even want to be connected with you on LinkedIn.
You don't even have to unfriend.
Yeah, I don't even do that. But the reason I like LinkedIn is because it does, in the moment you can be polite and say, sure, here's my LinkedIn. But then later on, you do have the choice. And then as Archana mentioned, LinkedIn has now messaging, right? You can use that to coordinate. So I would say don't feel the pressure to give out your phone number, for sure.
Okay, so we're about time, so one final question.
Okay. Sorry, so I work remotely, and I wanted to ask, how does it work when you try to find a mentor or someone to sponsor you? especially when you're in a remote setting, because it's really hard for me to connect to people in my team, and outside the team is even harder. So do you have any approach there?
Do you visit them? Is there budget for you to go meet with them?
It's there, but really there's no need to go in person anymore. I used to be able to do that before, and it hasn't happened for about at least 2 years now.
Okay.
So every time I ask someone to be my mentor, I just don't even hear a response from them. So it's just kind of demotivating sometimes. And
Do you have anyone in the room who's had this situation, or anyone who's remote who can answer the question?
Yes.
And I'm looking at someone who's nodding her head.
Sorry. Not really, no. Yeah, I should do that.
2 years is a
conferencing
long
is
time to
really
go without
helpful.
meeting your team.
Your team.
Yeah.
I think you should really push for it, I would say.
I would say ask your manager for opportunities to go to headquarters and meet with people,
Right.
because it's really important to connect with people. You're being cut out of important networks, important information,
Yeah.
and strategic conversations that you probably need to have a seat at the table for.
Right.
So I would definitely go back and ask your manager. If not, you need to reevaluate. Like, I'm sure there are opportunities in the place where you are.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
And you need to put yourself in front of everything.
I actually work with some remote teams as well, and I think one other thing that you can do is, with Slack or whatever messaging that you guys use, to just use that a lot, so that even if you're not just communicating about like strictly work things, putting some jokes on there, trying to like build a little bit more relationship, because one of the things that you're missing being remote is that like just side interactions. You're not like having the chit chat in the hallway or before a meeting as much. So trying to make up for that a little bit online instead, so that you build some stronger connections. And once you have a few folks who you have a deeper relationship with, then they can help to introduce you to somebody who you want to be your mentor.
And I'd just like to add one more thing finally. So I worked for Upwork. Our whole model was remote work. So guys, remote work is good. Work more remotely, use more Upwork tools. But one of the tactical tip that we used at Upwork is absolutely no audio conversation. Everything was video. So every conference room, every interaction, everything was on video. So it felt very natural. So it would not replace the exact chit chat, the offline, but it would give you a minute or two when people are setting up, and that gives you the opportunity to get in a thought or point of view. So video conversation all the time definitely makes a huge difference. I ended up sponsoring a couple of people in our Philippines office who I haven't even met, but they were just great, and it felt like they were there. So definitely video.
Okay,
We'll
thank you.
wrap it up by just saying, like, if there is no video and if there has been no interaction, I would still say that's something that you need to talk to people about.
And network locally. Like, then use that time to network locally, I think.
Locally. Yeah, aside from work. Yeah. Okay.
Network outside of work.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.